Hello and welcome to Careers Talks Live with Max from the Young Project, and we're here today to speak about recruitment, and we'll introduce our guest for today, who is also called Max. Do you want to introduce yourself, Max?
Yep. Hello, everyone. So my name is Max Pembleton, and I'm the director at Link3 Recruitment, based in West Bridgford.
Cool. So you kind of answered the first question there, which is great. You know what your job title is, but does being a director actually mean, and what does Link3 Recruitment do?
Yeah, so Link3 Recruitment, so we specialise in education, and we are a supply agency. So ultimately we supply staff to any establishments within education, really, mainly schools, but we go all the way through from nursery, primary schools, secondary schools, and then further education as well. Unlike some other agencies, we specialise in the whole workforce. So it's not just teachers and teaching staff. If people need maybe catering staff, receptionists, caretakers, midday supervisors, we recruit for the whole school workforce. And being a director, what does that involve? Well, I guess it can involve anything within the business, overseeing all areas of the business, my own internal recruitment, looking at business plans for the next 5 years, and then managing the staff as well, which is something I've learned quite a lot about over the past couple of years. Wow.
And I think so. Just, do you want to explain a bit more about like what recruitment is and how it actually works? Just because because this is my perception, and my perception is obviously going to be different from what it actually is, and probably different from what a young person's would be. And I know that when I was younger, I didn't know what recruitment was. I had never heard of it as an industry, but the way that I see it is kind of quite salesy, and that you need to kind of meet certain targets in order to get paid and all that sort of stuff. And how does it actually kind of work?
Yeah, I was the same, and I never planned on having a recruitment company or working in recruitment. I'll get into how that sort of happened, I guess, as we talk. But yeah, there are elements of sales within it, because ultimately we're kind of selling a product, but the products are people at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And to put it simply, we have schools or companies that are looking for staff members, and it's our job to find the perfect candidate for their company or their school, really. The reason we're called Link3 is because we link the three together. So we have the candidate, we have us as the agency in the middle, and then we have, for example, the school at the end. And it's our job to link the three together as smoothly as possible. So giving you an example, we might have a school that will call us and say, Max, I'm looking for a science teacher. And then it's my job to find them a science teacher who's going to fit the mold to their school. I think an important thing to mention is that a teacher that may be fantastic in one school may not suit another school. So it's important for me and, the guys within the company to get to know our clients as well as we possibly can, get to know our candidates and the worker as well as we possibly can, and then match the two together, really. So I wouldn't call it when I think of it, I wouldn't call it a sales role, because when I hear sales, when I hear people mentioning sales, I kind of think of an annoying salesman that won't leave you alone.
Me too.
Until they sell the product. But that's really far away from what we actually are. And we're dealing with people's careers on a day-to-day basis, and we can find someone their ideal role or job, and that can change their life, that means providing for their family, them achieving their goals that they've had for maybe years, helping people through training and achieving their qualifications. We've gone into that side of things now as well. So I would definitely say it's more than just a sales role. We've got a question here.
I was going to say that question. What personal qualities do you look for in the staff that you recruit?
Staff I recruit, ultimately it really depends on what the actual role is for. So for certain roles, we will require certain qualifications. and then others, might not require some qualifications. So first and foremost, it depends on what the role is that we're actually recruiting for. For me, a big part of it is communication and how someone comes across. So when I'm recruiting for Link 3 and someone to work actually for Link 3, whether it's an office manager, a social media manager, a consultant, I don't so much look at what's on the paper, although it's important. Very much to me, it's about how they conduct themselves, how much eye contact they're making when I first meet them, how they're presented. And I guess I want to know what drives them and what motivates them. But in a school setting, it's slightly different, because you need to know what experiences those teachers have had, and I guess in what setting they want to teach in order to match them for the right job.
I think eye contact, and that's a really important point, because as much as getting a job and everything else is about what qualifications that you do have and your level of experience and knowledge, and I think, as you say, it is more about the person and whether they kind of fit in with what your values are and what you think, what you're expecting of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, don't get me wrong, the qualifications are important, and once you've got those, nobody can take those away from you. But at the same time, I could have someone who's got an absolutely fantastic CV, and then they might not be very good in person, and they might be really shy, not make eye contact, maybe not very good on the phone. And within our business here, that's something which would be a lot more important, because you're building personal relationships day in, day out.
Yeah, I mean, I think eye contact as well. I'm struggling to do this eye contact thing via video, just because on my screen you're over here, but my camera's over here. So to make eye contact, I need to not look at you, which is even weirder. And I'm struggling with that. And so I think even now, because presumably you'd still have to recruit people virtually, still have to kind of gauge that via a virtual medium, which must be a bit more difficult, because I think it's harder to do that when you're not kind of in person, isn't it?
Yeah, so I had a video interview this morning, actually, and it was with a modern foreign languages teacher, and he was actually back in Spain. So he was a Spanish gentleman, and he was in Spain. So there was a little bit of a delay on the camera and stuff, which wasn't ideal, but you can still get the gist of it, although it is a lot different in person. But what we will be doing is, as soon as we can, we'll be following social distancing within the office, and people will be coming in to sign the paperwork and go through everything like that as well. So I'll get to meet them eventually.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? So I guess, how did you kind of get to where you are today? What was your route to get to your current job and where you are?
Yeah, so like I say, growing up, I never ever really thought of recruitment, if I'm being totally honest. And my passion was football and sport, I guess, like it is for a lot of young guys and girls as well. So I finished school, I went to college, I studied sport at college, and then I really wanted to push on with my football. I was at professional clubs all my life growing up, and then I went on a football scholarship to America. So I went to an American university. All my academics were paid for through football, and then I stayed there for a while. But the lifestyle was very, very different to what I was used to. For example, there were monks on campus, and some of the people, monks in a monastery. Yeah, it was very, very religious. Very, compared to what I was used to, it was very, very different. And then I came home one Christmas, back to what I was familiar with, and then I went back out to America, and I just thought, you know what, this isn't for me. So I made the decision to come back home, and then here I was working within health and fitness. So I was doing personal training, and then I was sales manager as well at a gym as well. But because I'd never really fulfilled what I wanted to fulfill in America, my aim was always to go back abroad. And I really wanted to live by the beach. That was like my thing. So I moved to Australia. I just decided I'm just going to catch a flight, move to Australia, and I'll deal with it when I get there. So I worked in the gym and played football out in Australia, which was amazing. But then after a few months, I snapped my cruciate ligament in my knee. So I had to have a knee reconstruction out in Australia, which kind of that put that dream to bed then. So I needed to look at things. So I worked in the gym out there for my remaining time out there.
Mhm.
Then the old gym where I used to work at here, they offered me a job again when I was coming home. I went back into that, and then this is where I got into recruitment. So in my sales manager role, I was speaking to a lot of people day in, day out. There was the face-to-face interaction, and we had someone come into the club that was the director of a recruitment company.
Mhm.
And they just got speaking to me and said, you know, I think you'd be fantastic in recruitment. Would you be interested? My degree was in sport, leisure, and education, so I had a passion for education, and it was around education. So I had a conversation with him, and I thought I'd never thought of it before. So in my head, it was a little bit of a risk to take, but I went for it, and I worked in recruitment with that company for about 3.5 years. But there was things within that company that I would have done a lot differently, and I wanted to do things differently, but ultimately I couldn't because you know the boss was above me, and
Yeah.
I could only do so much.
Mhm.
But then I found myself doing pretty much everything within that business, which gave me the motivation and ambition to then do it for myself, which I then went on to do. And now I run the business with one of my colleagues who I was with at the previous company, and also my cousin as well. So we always spoke about having our own business. He was playing professional football for Burton Albion, and then that stopped. So we came together, and now we both run Link 3.
Wow, that's awesome. So, I mean, just because I think this is interesting, and I'm going to ask this in case it's interesting for the guys watching.
Yeah.
How did you go about kind of starting up your own business? Like, was that quite an easy process? Was it a difficult process? How long did it take?
No, it wasn't an easy process. It was a difficult process. It took months. I'd probably say 6 months or more, really. I wrote up a number of business plans first, so I knew that you know what I was going to do was viable and that it could work.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I was doing a lot of research. I was doing a lot of reading. I had to obviously save up so that I could live because I wasn't paying myself a salary or anything like that. That was a major thing. I'd not long bought a house, so again, I was thinking, God, what's going to happen if I can't pay my mortgage, if I can't pay my bills?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, my thinking was that if that happens, then I'll just apply for a job again. And I was confident enough in myself to think, well, first of all, I can do it. But if anything was to go wrong, then I'll just apply for another job, and I'm in the same position that that I'm in. So I thought,
Mm-hmm.
why not? I've got nothing to lose, really. One thing that I am is very, very hardworking. So I think that that's a major point in anything that you do. And I didn't really have any doubts because I was that hardworking and still am now, I guess. So yeah, it's a scary time because you're going from something which you know exactly what you're earning each month,
You
and
have some security, don't you? And then you go into complete kind of what you know.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was at the back of my mind, but it never really crept in enough to ever affect the decision, I guess. So here we go. How many stuff have you got?
How many staff have you got now to help you run your business?
So now there's 8 of us now. So we started with 3 of us, and now there's 8 of us within the business. So there's myself, there's Charlie, there's Ryan. We're the 3 directors, and there's Joe is one of our consultants. We've got a social media manager. We've got a photographer and a videographer. When we run projects within schools, we always make sure we get clips of that. And then we've got Gina and Justine within the business as well. We've got Justine who's doing a admin apprenticeship at the moment, and then Gina's our office manager. And our original plan was to then have another consultant on board from September. But obviously with the uncertainty that coronavirus has caused, we'll probably delay that a little bit now, and hopefully in January we can get someone else on board. So yeah, we've grown really quickly, and we've developed some really good relationships. I managed to keep some existing relationships within the industry that I had, and luckily people wanted to continue working with me, which was a good sign. But we operate across the East Midlands at the moment, and got ambitions to expand further afield as well as time goes on.
So, well, I'm just gonna, the guys that are here, are either of you interested in running your own business, or is that something that you want to do in the future, or have you not kind of thought about that before? And then while they're answering that, I'll ask you another question, Max.
Yep.
So I was going to ask about your qualifications, but you kind of mentioned about that, and you said that you've got GCSEs, A levels, you went to university, and you did. So I'll kind of skip past that and go straight on to, like, do you have any kind of tips or advice for anyone wanting to go into the career that you're in now, or to get kind of in a similar position to you?
Yeah, I think my advice, and a big thing that I live by, is always being good to people and treating people ultimately how you want to be treated, and networking as well. I've had so many situations where I've spoke to someone. Well, I guess for example, we spoke at an event, at a networking event first, and then we're here now, doing this Q&A. But I've had teachers that maybe I've spoke to before I was even in this industry, and they've contacted maybe 5 or 6 years later, and because of the relationship I initially built all those years ago, that's come back around, and now we're working together, and I think things always come back around. So I think it goes for anything. I could be playing sport or in the supermarket or out having a drink, and you might be talking to someone about something nothing to do with work, but then at some point that can come back around, and the relationships that you formed will benefit you in the future. So for me, it's just all about communicating well with people, and treating people correctly, really. In the past, there's been a few things where maybe I haven't been treated within the workplace, as I felt I should have. And if I was, maybe I wouldn't be sat here right now. But those things made me think of other avenues that I could go down, and help me get to what I'm doing now, really.
Yeah, I think, as you say, keeping good relationships with people is really good. Even now, if you're in school and stuff, recommend keeping good relationships with all your teachers, because when you go for your first job, you may or may not have anyone to put down as references. And so if you need someone, because quite often jobs will ask for 2 referees, so you could use a teacher if you've got a good relationship with them. So definitely, I think that's a really important point there. And like, I remember kind of asking for a reference from a teacher because I didn't have anyone else to ask, and they know you pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think on that point as well, it wasn't as important as I was coming through school, but now certainly social media. One of the first things I will do is look at someone's social media, and you don't want to be putting anything untoward on there that an employer could see or get a hold of. One of our ambassadors actually plays for Leicester City, Hamza Chowdhury, and he not too long ago, actually, it was like a tweet that he did when he was 14 or 15 or something like that he got in trouble for. And I think it's important in this day and age to really be careful with social media.
Definitely. Connie's asked, do you enjoy your job, and how would you progress your business in the future?
Yeah, I really do enjoy my job, actually. I'm a people's person. I'm really interested in how people have got to be in my office wanting to go and teach in schools. And it fascinates me, people's journeys and what they want to achieve.
Me too. That's why I'm doing this.
Yeah, it really does. So I do enjoy it. I enjoy it even more knowing that I'm working for myself now. I remember at my last company that my girlfriend at the time, she had a graduation, and I wasn't allowed to go to her graduation because my boss wouldn't let me. And that really bothered me. And I thought, I want to be in a position where I can control, if I've got something important like that, I want to be able to attend it. So things like that are good now. I can be a little bit more flexible, albeit I work all hours. So, I don't go swanning off anywhere. And how would we progress in the future? Well, I only sat down the other day actually and just did our 5-year plan. So we want to expand outside of the East Midlands. We want to have more employees. We want to have a bigger presence on social media. But I think something as well, we want to build education as much as possible. But then at some point, I think we'll look to go into other sectors as well. Because I think recruitment is recruitment's recruitment.
Yeah.
And I think once you understand that, you can then recruit for anything. As long as you've got a good knowledge of that sector, you can start to build in other areas. So that's something that we'll look to progress into as well in the future.
Yeah, I mean, even just speaking to you, like I'm realizing how different like companies recruit and how different it is, because your company sounds like quite not relaxed, but you know what I mean, like a bit less kind of pressurized as opposed to some recruitment companies out there. Because as I mentioned earlier, some of those recruitment companies are very, you have to meet these sales figures each month, or else like you're going to be, if you don't do it over a few months, then we're going to have to look at your performance and say whether you're good enough or not for us. Whereas like I think that's important, that you can't kind of tarnish the whole recruitment industry with one brush, and that you have different companies within that. So even though there are stereotypes, it's not necessarily how we perceive them.
Yeah, that's an important point. We do get tarnished, with the recruitment brush. And if I'm honest, we are a relaxed company, but that's how I wanted it to be. At previous companies I've had, target after target after target, and you're working under pressure. But although that's needed at times, I don't think that always gets the best out of people. And I think you need to really understand your employees as well and how they work best. So I think we come from more of an approach of, okay, you might not have hit it this week or got to where you need to be, but why? And looking into how we can now move forward. What do we need to do to improve it? Do we need to look at it from a different perspective? And it's more of, I would say it's more of a working together to achieve a goal as a whole, rather than, right, I'm the boss, you haven't hit it, I'm not happy with you. Although it might work in some businesses, it's not really how we do our work here. And so far, it's paid off. There might be people I work with in the future where we need to change the approach a little bit, and we might need to be a little bit more assertive. But we are a bit more of a, I think, modern, relaxed company. We've got some artificial grass upstairs with some bean bags for little chill out areas at times as well. So it's, although there's a time to be serious, and there's a time to relax as well. But I think at the moment we've got a nice balance.
So what would you say was like the biggest factor that has helped you in your career journey so far?
Biggest factor, I think a big part for me personally is my family, and also my own motivations. I've always been very ambitious, and I'm I guess somewhat of a perfectionist, and I'm very, very critical of myself if I'm not happy with something, which always keeps me going. So I'll get to somewhere and I think, right, okay, I'm happy with that, but what's the next thing? And one thing my dad always taught me growing up, and it was mainly in football, but I've been able to relate it to everything really. He always taught me that if I'm doing something and then something goes well, never get too ahead of myself and too confident with it, because you'll get complacent. And then at the same time, if something goes bad, don't beat yourself up about it too much or be too critical, because it will come good again.
As long as you learn from it, of course.
Yeah, so one thing I always try to do is just stay in that middle. And although I think you can celebrate your successes, and you can be critical, it's important not to go too far up or too far down. I think it's important to stay level-headed, and then get back to the drawing board and remember why you're doing what you're doing ultimately.
Yeah, have a bit of a balance at the end of the day, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And that works for me, and I can only speak from my personal perspective. But I think that's something I'll take with me throughout anything that I do. I think it's easy for some people to get carried away, and it's also easy for some people to sort of sink and beat themselves up about things. But things can change very quickly, as we know. This year's proved that.
Yes.
So it's important not to get too demoralized, when things are happening like they are at the moment in the world.
And I think that leads perfectly on to the next question, which was about kind of on the other side of things, like what was the biggest experience so far, and kind of how did you overcome that?
Yeah, my biggest obstacle, I think initially was probably my injuries, just totally outside of recruitment. It was something that mentally I had to deal with, and I had to look at other things. I'd always been set on that was my goal. And now all of a sudden I've got the physio telling me that I won't even be able to run. So I had to deal with that. Which for me, it helped through watching things online, looking at other people's experiences, reading. But then I think another obstacle for me was my old employer, just because they didn't necessarily do things how I would like to do them. And I found myself working there and becoming very, very frustrated that I wasn't in control of certain things. And I remember each day I would drive home on the dual carriageway, and I would look either side. And every time I would look either side, I would just see miserable people on the way back from work. And I was almost getting a fear that I was becoming that miserable person. I've been to work, done my 9 to 5 or whatever it was, and now I'm miserable, like everyone else. Hopefully they weren't all miserable, by the way, but this is just the idea that was in my head. And I think overcoming that and saying, you know what, I'm going to take control of this situation and have my own ambitions and work towards those and take that leap. That was another obstacle, because I was in a comfortable position. I was doing well with that company. So I could have just stayed where I was, and, I would have didn't have to worry about my bills and stuff like that. But I wanted to push myself. So I made that decision and overcame that decision. And, I look back now and it was the best decision I've made, to be honest.
Awesome. I think kind of going back to your first point there, that's quite an important one. The fact that you can always change because you've set one from the start. Yeah. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to follow that all the way through, and that you're like, say you want to be a vet or something, you don't necessarily have, even if you've done all the qualifications to be a vet, if you get there and you decide like that's not what you want to do, or if you or like, I don't know, if circumstances change, don't be afraid to change your goal and what you're working towards, because as you said, I think you want to be happy at the end of the day, don't you? And you want to kind of do things that you enjoy, and you don't have to go down one route necessarily.
Yeah, I think, things change, and sometimes it's out of your control. And I think the sooner that you understand that, the easier it is, to deal with things. Another example is that years and years ago, I applied for the fire service, and I thought, I'd like to work within the fire service. And I had never really failed at anything. I was quite academic. I was quite good at sport and stuff. So I thought I won't be a problem. And I sat the exam, I passed the exam, and then I got a letter basically saying, although you've passed the exam, other people passed the exam better than you did and got better scores. So I didn't go through. So I didn't go through to the next round. And I couldn't get my head around it for a long time. I thought, well, I'd be brilliant in the fire service. But, you know, it wasn't meant to be for whatever reason. And I think you then just got to move on and, you know, look at the next thing, really. But understanding that was hard at the time, because it was my first real point where I was like, I shouldn't be failing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, it's okay to fail. Like, as long as you learn from
About
that.
to say that, yeah.
Because we're always taught from a young age, like, you have to be successful and you have to, you know, like, succeed at everything you do. But I mean, I think failure is fine as long as you learn from those.
Yeah, I think there's a lesson in everything. At least that's how I try and look at it. You know, a prime example is at the moment with coronavirus. It's not ideal for most businesses. You know, and yeah, of course, businesses wish that this isn't happening right now. But like I was saying to you before, it's given me a good chance to step back, have a look at things from a different perspective. Maybe we can add another string to our bow, and maybe there's another way we can work, which is going to add to us that we didn't work in that way before. So, you know, I'm grateful for the time it's given me to think about things and the nice walks I've had in the sun. But, you know, at the same time, we were just getting busier and busier. So it's frustrating, but it's something I can't control. So there's no point in getting hung up on it.
Mm-hmm. I've got 2 more questions, and then we'll see if anyone else has got anything, and then that's it pretty much. So, if you had to do anything, like, so far career-wise, what would you change?
If I had to change anything?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you may not change anything, but if you were to do everything again, would you do everything the same? Would you change anything?
I wouldn't get injured. I wouldn't get injured if I could change it. But you know what? I do believe that everything happens for a reason, and maybe if I did change something, I wouldn't be sat here with my own recruitment company now. So I don't regret anything. I don't regret any of the decisions that I've made, because I think, you know, even when things haven't necessarily been great, I've learned a lot from those opportunities. You know, I think a prime example is where I used to work. I've learned a lot of how I wouldn't want my employees to feel and what I would do differently to make sure that doesn't happen. So in answer to your question, I wouldn't change anything, because I'm happy with where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've learned a lot from where I've come. Maybe one thing I would add, I would have liked to have learned a trade.
Okay.
Even though that's so far away from what I'm currently doing. And I'm glad I've got my degree. Although my degree was sport, leisure and educational development, and although the education side fits to what I'm doing now, I've never used it as much as maybe I could have. But I just think if I would have had a trade when I lived out in Australia, I could have used that. You know, with my house now, when I'm doing things to my house, I'm pretty useless with DIY, and I'd like to be better at that. So yeah, I think adding a trade. One thing I am doing at the moment, I've just started last week. I've just started learning Spanish.
Oh, awesome.
So maybe I should have started that a bit earlier, and I might be able to speak fluent now. But yeah, other than that, you know, I'm pretty happy with everything, really.
Cool. And then my last question, I mean, I think you kind of may have answered it already, but maybe there's one thing that stands out because you kind of mentioned your learning. I was going to say, like, what's the most important lesson that you've learned so far in your career?
My most important lesson, I think, is probably to be able to adapt. And like I mentioned, you know, sort of staying in the middle. I think that's a very, very important lesson, because you see so many things just in the media and stuff, you know, especially with footballers and stuff like that, they get carried away. But I think it's very, very important just to stay level-headed. And like I said earlier on, the way you are with people, the way you treat them, will always come back around, I think. So just in general life, I think it's very important to conduct yourself in a way that you'd be happy to. If I treated you like that, you'd be happy with that. And you'll make contacts where at the time you probably won't even realize, and then years later you'll be very, very grateful that you were how you were. I think a lot of people, you know, maybe burn bridges, and it ruins other opportunities for them in the future when maybe there wasn't any need to burn that bridge at the time. So that would be my biggest thing that I've learned, I think, is that things always come back around. And even if you're not happy with something, or it's not something that, you know, that you would do, always be good and do the right thing by people, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, no, really agree. I think that's a very, very important point to finish on there. Is there anything that you want to promote, like social wise?
For Link3, yeah. So, you know, we're on all the platforms. It's just at Link3 Recruitment. We've got our social media manager, Shana. She does it all. She puts some really good content up there. It's not always just about jobs or education. You know, I know lately she's been putting a lot about the Black Lives Matter campaign and everything that's been going on with that as well. So there's a lot about our ambassadors on there. We've got a number of ambassadors in different spotlights, which is really interesting. So yeah, feel free to give us a follow and just have a look at what's going on with us. Yeah,
sounds great. And for anyone else that's watching, make sure that you give us a follow as well. We're on Instagram, theyoung.project, Twitter, Young We Are Young, Facebook, Young Network Group. And if you want to get involved in the next one, then by all means sign up for the mailing list, so you can access that on our website, which is www.weareyoung.org.uk, and check out all of the other videos on here.